Welcome to Deep Dive Film School. I am Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Pulcher.
And if you like what you see/hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people what?
Find good media. That's right. Our most active channels are Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. So please join us there for this journey. Continuing this journey, we're on our third installment of our Albert Brooks Festival.
Yes.
Fascinating festival so far.
Very much so.
Very conceptual director.
Yeah.
And we have Lost in America this week, 1985, written and directed by him, like all of these are. It's him and Albert Brooks playing a version of himself again.
Yes.
David and Linda Howard. Julie Haggerty is his wife
from
here.
Airplane.
That's right. That's what I remember her from.
And
as well.
What About Bob? She's the mom in What About Bob?
That's right.
Yeah.
She's the mom in a lot of things.
She is. And she's quintessentially 80s. And this is probably...
awesome here.
She's maybe the best part.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot because Albert Brooks is amazing in this. And this is probably the most 80s of the movies that we've seen for this festival.
Yeah.
It's so perfectly encapsulates. I think a lot of his movies toy with, or at least these three, toy with the idea of the sort of 80s yuppie, in terms of like, you know, the desire for success and power and money and you know, all these things. And this one definitely does it the most. It's interesting to think about if real life was a send up of the documentary. That was kind of a burgeoning thing at the time when that came out.
Yeah.
And then what's the second one called?
Modern Romance.
Modern Romance. I was like, it's not True Romance. That's a different movie. Modern Romance is also a send up of the sort of rom-com.
Yeah.
This is less a send up of a piece of media and more of just what was happening.
Yeah.
In the 80s, right? Which was this like kind of touch grass, you know, try to get away from that yuppie lifestyle, right?
Yeah, like, this is very different than the other ones. The least conceptual of all the ones, I think, so far.
Agreed.
As far as like a plot and device and kind of what he's trying to say overall, where real life had a very specific thing it was trying to do and say and whatever. And this one is a little more commercial as well. Probably, like you said, playing to that crowd. And you know, it's a pretty fun movie. It was a fun movie. Probably not my favorite of the festival so far, but still, I laughed my ass off in a lot of these
I think
things.
it's the funniest
You
so
think?
far.
Oh, wow.
Even though like there's a lot of really funny stuff in real life, and there is funny stuff, but it's a little more uncomfortable in Modern Romance.
That's true.
This is just like funny.
Yeah.
I think it's so far as the funniest
so many good lines
that Albert Brooks has been, because he has so many killer lines, and you like his character the most. Like he's really insufferable in real life. The movie Real Life, not in real life. And in Modern Romance, he's creepy, right? And I think you're supposed to feel those things.
He's really insufferable in Modern Romance, for sure. We're here. He's more of kind of...
You're rooting for him.
A little more of an everyman, although he does have this $100,000 a year salary. And you know, he is this ad executive, which he loves being ad executive.
The core of the nest egg.
That's right.
As he keeps calling
You can't even use those words anymore. So
we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to lots of stuff here, but it's essentially a story about this husband and wife. And, you know, we wake up in this newly bought house with boxes and they're laying in bed and he's like worrying about this promotion he's getting to get in the morning. And he wakes her up like just like total asshole Albert Brooks. Like there's so many things that he encapsulates.
Yep.
Like at one point he quits his job, right? And
well, sort of quits.
Yeah, okay, yeah, good point.
It's a meltdown of a scene.
To him, it's Easy Rider, though.
Yeah.
But he goes to his wife and her job, and he's like, "You should quit too."
Yeah, let's have sex right here on the table.
Right now, we need to be spontaneous.
Well, there's something about you talk about the soft opening of him lying in bed. There's something about Albert Brooks' face, just his resting face, that you're like, oh, in his head, he's spinning out of control. So for that to be the introduction is just like in Modern Romance, where the introduction is them at the table and they break up.
Yeah.
Here, it's him going, I think it was a mistake. I think buying this house was a mistake, like right out of the gates.
Right, yeah, just constantly. But what I was trying to get at too is that he goes to that, I'm suffering, so you have to suffer with me.
100%.
Like, come with me and be miserable because that's all I have.
Yeah. Now this is what life is doing to me, so you have to be in it with me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this.
But essentially the plot, they quit their jobs and try and be free spirits and live on their $190,000.
Yes, instead of Easy Rider with Harleys, it's Easy Rider with a Winnebago.
Yeah.
And we'll get more into the themes there because I think they're so brilliantly sort of unraveled throughout this movie.
Yeah.
But I love just starting off from this point of like, if you went in blind like I did, you're like, I don't know what this movie is going to be about. I have no idea, right? But the setup enough of like, you're going to get the promotion. You're going to get the promotion. And everybody telling him like, good luck. And he's on the phone with the Mercedes-Benz guy.
$44,000?
$44,000. And he's trying to hard sell me. I got to get off the phone, right? Of course I want the leather interior. All of it so perfectly sets up that you're like, something bad is going to happen in this meeting, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Everybody telling him good luck. And then he goes in there and so quickly it turns sideways from what he thought it was going to be. And his reaction is the reaction that we all wish that we could have. And
totally. Exactly. He's living everyone's their worst day at work.
Yeah.
Right? This is what, yeah.
But you think about this is such a trope that we've seen so many times of the guy going in to get his promotion and then something else happening. And you go, there's been great ones we've seen, right? I'm thinking
Who's
of
coming with me.
I'm thinking of Kevin Spacey in American Beauty. I'm thinking about Ed Norton in Fight Club. There's so many good ones of these of going into the boss, but this one's just fantastic. And he's like, what is the last thing he yells at his boss? He's like, the wig secret is no longer safe with me, right? And he walks out and he's like, everyone want to know what the future looks like? It's a bald man in the office saying you have to move to fucking New York with him. It's so good. And your wig secret isn't safe with me. Like that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
and
so
he goes
good.
He tells him "fuck you" a couple times, which ultimately is probably what gets him fired. But they bring him in, and they've got Ford. It's not just any client.
No, it's Ford. Yeah.
But he just bought a house, didn't he?
Yeah.
And now they're asking him to move. To
and
New
he's
York.
He's like, so I'm being punished because I'm too talented.
I've been here longer.
Yeah, if I was less talented, he's like, give me my 8 years back. I'm not leaving this office until I get my 8 years back. So many fucking again.
He's a child.
Yeah, and real life is very clever, and there is some definite laugh out louds. Modern romance also very clever, less laugh out louds and more of like, what is he doing here? Right. Very clever and fascinating.
Yes.
But this, hand over hand, I laughed out loud so many damn times watching this because he just had so many good one-liners. And, for a lot of this, Julie Haggerty is sort of playing straight man to him.
She's so good.
But once we start to get more into it, she gets some of the biggest laughs in this movie to me. She is so, so funny. And it made me start to realize, these are not just movies that star Albert Brooks, but also are written and directed by him.
Yep.
And I'm really realizing through these three movies, he's fantastic at directing women. Like each of our main women in these movies get such great scenes and get such great dialogue and get such great interaction
and has a voice. They all have voice.
And that's I'd say that's more unusual going back to like the 1980s and thinking about a lot of these sort of broad comedies.
For sure, absolutely. It's interesting too that like you think about the amount of money they're talking about living on $190,000, which even today people would be like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But he gets into a salary leader when he's at the unemployment office, which is my favorite scene. But they get on this, he loses his job. They go and look at farm homes and boom, they're off. They buy a mobile home. And they have this party and announce that they want to remarry.
Yeah.
And they want to stop in Vegas first.
And and that part's sweet. And you can tell that like he's a gregarious, like fun guy. And like obviously their friends love them. And then immediately you're like, oh, they're trying to talk themselves into it. Where like he's driving along.
There's not really any reason to get remarried.
No, and he's driving along and we're listening to Born to Be Wild. And she's back there making him a grilled cheese sandwich. In the microwave. And then she walks up and she's like, I love this kitchen. Right? And she literally means the kitchen in the back of the Winnebago.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, this is the first time I've ever tasted grilled cheese. Right? So they're immediately trying to talk themselves into this being a good idea. And again, like not knowing where this movie was going, I was like, oh, this is funny. And like, he tries to like give the like
Easy Rider thumbs
and
up
then
to
gets
the bike
flipped
rider.
off, and I was like, okay, what's going to happen here? Because I started going, all right, this is like a National Lampoon's Vacation kind of a situation.
I was wondering too. So you had never seen this, right?
And I'm like, how many hijinks? Like they're lost in America. Like, is this a road trip movie where they're going to go all over the place?
Yeah, that's what I was expecting.
And they go to Vegas. And it's like, well, we could get married right now, but let's do it in the morning. And he tries to like, and she's
be fresh,
and she's talking about like, but we could go and watch some porno movies. And he's like, porno movie? Like, he's like, did I marry a stranger? Like, who am I talking to? And tries to bribe for the room. That's a fantastic scene.
Oh, yeah, I just left society. I don't do reservations.
Well, and the fact that, the caveat, the continual caveat of we've dropped out of civilization. My wife and I were dropping out of civilization. It's like, well, that's really commendable, but you still need a reservation.
They get the junior suite.
Well, and he's trying to bribe. Yeah. Well, it's the junior. They call it the junior bridal. Yeah. And you're like, what the fuck is a junior bridal suite?
I don't know.
But she's like, give him another $50, and he just immediately goes, I'm bad at this. I get bad seats at the ball game. Just tell me how much and before he can finish, the guy goes, $100. And the room they get, he refers to as if Liberace had children, this is where they would sleep. Because it's the two little heart-shaped beds.
Yeah.
No hot tub, no nothing. And when he wakes up the next morning, it's such a killer line. When he wakes up the next morning, 6 a.m., right? Honey, get up. She's nowhere to be found.
Nope, she's gone.
He goes downstairs.
We're in Vegas.
In his bathroom.
Now you know what's going to happen.
And 22 hit me. 22 hit me. The old Chinese guy is like, she loves the number 22.
Yeah, she does. She gets addicted. Yeah, she basically loses their nest egg.
That next scene where he's still in the bathrobe and they go together and they sit down in the booth and talk.
And Gary Marshall's the pit boss.
Dude,
amazing.
I skipped back and rewatched that conversation 3 times. I couldn't stop laughing. And again, it's Julie Haggerty. She's like,
how much are we talking here?
I've never felt more alive in my entire life. I didn't have any worries. I didn't have any concerns. I felt absolutely perfect. And he's like, how many times have you gambled? Twice. This is the second time, and like just the stark face that she has, I was dying.
So good.
And he's just like, why didn't you tell me you were a diseased person?
Give or take 1,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Why didn't you tell me it's like having what does he say? He's like, it's like having a venereal disease. You're supposed to tell me so I can make the choice of whether or not I want to marry you. You're a diseased, dirty person. You lost it. The core of the nest egg.
The core. You can't even use the word egg anymore.
Oh, my God.
What does he say? He says, don't use the word nest or egg ever again.
Yeah.
You'll have those things over easy with toast.
Yeah. The twigs in the tree where they have their babies, because you can't say the word nest anymore.
So let's talk about Gary Marshall here, and when he goes and he basically tries to pitch him an ad idea to get his money back.
But I love that, like, he's not entertaining the idea of ever giving this guy his money back.
Never.
But he just wants
Never once.
He's enjoying the conversation, right?
Me too.
Oh my God. And he's like,
just think of the publicity.
Yeah. You could put us on one of those. No, look, that's something no one's ever done before. Equate Las Vegas with Santa Claus. You could do that. You'd be the first one. And he's just like, why would I do that? Why would I want to do that?
Never, it doesn't buy it.
Dude, absolutely amazing.
Then we'll be the casino. Then everyone's going to want their money back.
Yeah, and he's like, no, but we're the only, we're not gamblers.
We're the losers.
Yeah, we didn't mean to. Listen, my wife and I are dropping out of society.
If you could just forgive this.
And he's still in his bathrobe. It's such a brilliant... Yeah, I immediately was...
He starts playing word association games with him, doesn't he?
He's like, I'm a schmuck. I like Wayne Newton. He's like, it was a bad example. It was a bad example. I love Wayne Newton too. Just like...
Anyways.
It's such a... Like, again, not knowing where the movie's going and then for that to happen... And here's where I wanted to kind of take a little bit of a step back in thinking about the sort of plot device of this movie, or the point of this movie, what Albert Brooks was wanting to say, which is that this idea of there being in the 80s these yuppies who are like trying to sort of drop out and go back to this like the 1960s hippie sort of a thing, right? And that she even says to him, she's like, well, in Easy Rider, they didn't have any money. And he's like, of course they did. They were selling cocaine, right? But she makes a really good point, which is they weren't really doing it. They were claiming they were doing this thing, but they had $190,000. They were going to go out east and then find one of these farms and then buy a house or whatever, right? And like, so they're still full of shit. Right.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're lost in America. They get to Arizona.
Yeah. They made it like 2 states, right?
And they could do that in a day.
Yeah. And then they stop and they're in a trailer park somewhere in Arizona. Right. And they stay there. They don't ever like that's as far as they ever got.
We need to get jobs tomorrow.
Yep. It's
We're skipping a whole bunch here because
we are, but I just think that as
the Hoover Dam.
Well, sure, and I think that's getting to that is very important. But I think that this concept of
I agree,
just being because that's what all of his movies are about, right? Or at least
the themes of
these
Easy
3
Rider
movies
are actually layered in here.
Well, and I think these 3 movies are when he deconstructs these movies, what he's saying is these romantic ideals of this concept are totally full of shit, right? And that's not like the people who are actually living these small, quote unquote, small lives don't think they're romantic. Again, going to your point about the unemployment guy, right? The unemployment office guy is just like, the what? And he's like, the top shelf jobs, like for like he's like, the $100,000 jobs? He's like, yeah. He's like, oh yeah, hold on, let me go get some of those, right? But that's how clueless these other people are, and so they don't have any romanticized ideas about being poor or having to live out of a Winnebago or living in a fucking trailer park, right? Yeah. Sorry, we are jumping around. Let's talk about Hoover Dam.
You're actually those are all great points, and yeah, it's a lot of that is in all of his movies, right? That's a theme that we can kind of pick out after watching enough of these at this point, right?
Yeah.
So
is that he's very clever at being like, yeah, me too. And then he completely explains why it's hypocritical or why you're full of shit. And you're like, oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. He's very good at that.
Yeah. They have this blow up at the Hoover Dam in front of all these people and cops. And, she gets tired of being yelled at, and what a weird place to get in a fight too. Like it's just kind of this odd thing. And
she's like, let's go inside. He's like, we are inside. This is our inside. This is our front yard. Like at the Hoover Dam.
You're starting to get a good Albert Brooks impression going. I feel like mine's pretty solid as well at this point.
It's because you want to talk like him because he's always nailing it. And then she
such a complainer.
They have the nest egg conversation. You're not allowed to use the word nest or egg ever again.
That's right.
And then she goes out and she hitchhikes.
Yep.
And the next line is my favorite line in this movie. They drive off and he hops in the Winnebago and he starts driving after her. And it cuts to him driving and he goes, I've lost a woman, a whole woman.
Yeah.
And it's like the greatest line to me. A whole woman. Anyway.
Yeah, no, he ends up finding her at this diner with this big guy who says she doesn't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Gets dragged outside and basically gets punched. And this is my favorite line. He's like, next time get a ride with a small woman.
That's right. And she got Julie Haggerty, amazing performance. She's like, he was so interesting. You know that he escaped from prison? And he's like, oh, that's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, next time get a ride from a small woman.
Yeah, and then
God.
they get pulled over by the cop.
Yes.
And Easy Rider comes into play again.
Yep.
And it's so funny how it works this time.
Yeah.
Right? He gets out, and tries to play it up. And
My wife and I have dropped out of society.
yeah, it uses that line again. And then, he asks about Easy Rider and the guy has no interest.
Yeah.
And then she comes out and
mentions Easy Rider.
And it's his favorite movie.
Yep. That's why he bought a motorcycle.
Exactly. But also just a cop liking that movie is funny.
Right, totally.
So,
and then he asks him if he's ever seen The Terminator.
you should.
You should. You remind me of.
Yeah.
Which is funny because this is 85 and he doesn't really remind me of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but he does remind me a lot
of Robert
Patrick
Yeah, I thought
in
the same
second
thing.
one.
But that movie hadn't come
out yet.
Yeah. And I thought
He's
the
a
same
motorcycle
thing. That's
cop.
funny.
Yeah.
So anyways, but it ends up working. They do pull into Stafford, Arizona RV park. That's their new home.
Yep.
She is a assistant manager at the Wiener Schnitzel. And
He had to sleep on it? Skippy had to sleep on it?
Who's just like shitting in the back of their motorhome or something. And
he goes to the unemployment office. Well, yeah, first he goes to try and get a delivery man job. The guy's like, yeah, I probably should have put delivery boy, huh? And he's like, do you have a car? And he's like, no. He's like, I have an RV. And he goes, so you're going to make deliveries in your RV? And he's like, I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah.
That's so good.
And then he points him to the unemployment office and he goes down there and he's asking for the $100,000 jobs. This is my favorite scene.
It's incredible
because it's just like you said, the ignorance. It's like Schitt's Creek or something, right? Like
100%
right,
Schitt's Creek. That's such a good comparison.
Yeah, they're
so out of touch.
Yeah, they're in a different world.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that Schitt's Creek's a bit more exaggerated with the amount of money and how rich they were or whatever. But here it's kind of comparison. They're in a different world where they don't understand some of the things and around them and just the niceties and also just what it's like to be poor.
Well, and you feel like that for the first time when he's talking, for the very first time when because that's part of the shtick or part of the why the jokes keep landing is because this whole time, and you're really not sure about Julie Haggerty's character. You don't know how much she is aware or not aware, but Albert Brooks' character of David is wholly unaware up until this scene how dumb his idea was. Like he keeps talking it up like the only bad thing that happened is that she gambled their money away. If that hadn't happened, everything else about their plan is great, right?
Yeah.
And it isn't until he's at the unemployment office that you're like, that when he's like, $100,000 plus bonus, huh? Wow. Yeah, no, that's, there aren't any jobs like that in this whole town, maybe this whole country, And it's like the very first time it's like starting to dawn on him
how good he had it,
and how fucked he is right now, right? And
his
like
paranoia and his he's a very reactionary person, right?
Right.
And so his paranoia and over emotional reaction to something will get him in the shitter. We've seen it happen many times.
Totally.
Whether it's with a girlfriend or whatever.
But there's never there's never any clarity of growth. I think it's why there is this piece of his movies that reminds me of Seinfeld, right? Like this idea of what was Larry David's pledge with Seinfeld was no one learns and no one grows, right? Like that was the joke, is like Seinfeld was never going to have a very special episode because he's like, these people can't grow, right? They'll never learn from their mistakes. And with the exception of like the very, very, very last 5 minutes of this movie, our characters finally learn.
Yeah.
But the whole rest of the movie and the purpose of the joke is that he'll have a full fucking meltdown and then keep right on going, right? He can't learn.
No, he can't.
That's why the joke works the way it
down to
does.
the credits rolling and he's chasing a guy for a job.
But that was the final moment of learning, right? And
Yeah.
but he has to hit rock bottom first. And rock bottom for him here is that he's a crossing guard. And and he's getting bullied by
$5.50 an hour.
and he's getting bullied by children. Yeah. And that scene where they're like riding around on bikes and he yells to the guy that's coming who's stopped. He's like, faster, faster, kill the child, kill the child. It's so fucking good. And he just like walks back over and sits in his lawn chair with his sign. And then that's the reveal of when he gets back home, because she is set up, I've got a callback for assistant manager. He just said he needed to sleep on it. And then when he gets back, he's like, what are you wearing? And again, perfect delivery from her. Well, it's a uniform for der Wiener Schnitzel, right? Just like, so fucking funny. And then the 16-year-old is in the shitter.
Yeah.
And he's the manager who had to sleep on it.
And then they basically decide, they're like, what's his name in that?
Skippy?
Yeah, Skippy.
Yeah.
Can you give us a moment?
Yeah. So he turns on the TV.
Yeah. And he's like, so I have a plan, and I think we just eat shit and go to New York.
Yeah. He's like, I think I have an idea of a plan. It's starting to percolate in my head. And she's like, does it involve going to New York? And he's like, yeah, and eating shit. Yep, let's do it.
Let's go. That's their learning moment. That's pretty much it.
And that's how the movie pretty much ends.
Yeah.
And again, like our other two films, there's a coda, right? There is a text on screen, right?
Yeah. Can I read?
Yeah. Do it.
As Utah residents.
I know. Yes.
To those few that have the courage to drop out and find themselves, may God be with you and take you through Utah, avoiding Nevada completely.
Second time, including Raising Arizona, the second time that the epilogue of the movie includes a reference to Utah.
That is funny.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder what his connection is.
I don't know. I think it's just because it's such a good punchline. Utah is.
Yeah.
Less so now, but definitely like back in the 80s, it was still like just known for being like the weird Mormon land.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think had some of my favorite.
You convinced me not my least favorite after talking it over. Like, I did laugh a lot, and there was a lot of great stuff in here.
It's just it's the least. You made the point perfectly, which is it's the least conceptual. It's the most normal movie.
Less conceptual oomph than his other movies.
Yeah.
So I would probably put this above Modern Romance, though.
Yeah. It's more pleasurable to watch.
Yeah, and
I'd say,
it's
than
funnier.
Modern Romance.
But yeah, their whole tour ends up being 3 states.
It's 3 states, and they just and
if you include New York, I guess 4, but they would have gone there anyway.
Miserable the whole time. And it's interesting. I don't know if you saw what the movie poster of this movie is.
Yeah, it is the whole country.
Well, no. Well, maybe there's a different movie poster. The one that I saw it looks like it's like the Red Rock of Arizona, like landscape. And then it's their 2 figures. It's one of those classic 80s like painted movie posters. And both of their heads are stuck in the sand.
I did see this, yes.
Like ostriches. Mm-hmm. And, and I was like, oh, I remembered seeing that movie like at the video store when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But after watching the movie and then seeing the movie poster again, I was like, that's a really provocative movie poster, actually, because it perfectly
Heads
represents
in the sand.
their characters of like having this idea of dropping out of society and like going against the grain and like finding themselves, right? Like he talks about that early on. He's like,
it's a very punk rock thing to do.
Yeah,
and
I'm
they're
so
not
angry
punk rock
I didn't
at all.
find myself.
Yeah.
That's it. That's exactly it. Is that they're not, and I think this happens with a lot of us. Who we wish we were
is midlife crisis, right?
Is very different from who we actually are.
Sure.
Right? And so it is midlife crisis. And it's also just like the romantic wish is not, I mean, if there is a moment before meeting Skippy, that is when the straw breaks the camel's back, it's when he encounters the guy that does have the Mercedes.
Oh, yeah. I'm actually surprised we didn't talk about that. It's like, What are you doing?
Is that leather? And he's like, of course it's leather. Like, he's just a moron. And he's like,
That's the car he was on the phone
oh yeah.
with.
And he goes, where are you trying to get to? And he's like, LA, I sure as shit don't want to be stuck in Arizona. And so it's like, that's all it takes to break the Easy Rider fantasy is just a smell of the interior of the car he could have gotten.
It's true.
And you're like, how beautifully
It's
shallow.
because that's when he comes home and finds them is right after that.
And then he meets Skippy and he's like, that's it.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
I want that Mercedes.
Yeah, fuck this Winnebago.
And then he chases the guy down for a job.
And he takes a 30% pay cut. Fantastic movie.
It was
so
great.
damn funny.
Very fun and entertaining, no doubt. But the more we talk about it, the more I look fondly on it now.
Yeah.
So that's part of the fun of doing this.
100%.
This podcast. All right, next week we are going to do that one scene from It Follows for our Halloween episode.
Yes.
And then we're going to continue our Albert Brooks Festival with Defending Your Life.
Yep.
After that, so please like and subscribe. If you like what you see, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube are our biggest platforms. So join us there, please. And thanks for watching.
Bye, you guys.